Hello and welcome to the 2023 Archives Bazaar, brought to you by the Border Regional Archives Group. I'm Angelica Valenzuela, Recording and Filing Supervisor at the Doña Ana County Clerk's office. Today, several organizations from all over New Mexico have gathered to display items from their collections and archives to show our community the importance of history. The theme of this year's bazaar is Recollections. We interviewed several of these organizations and asked them about what they brought and why it's significant today. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Claudia Rivers and I work at the University of Texas at El Paso in the Library Special Collections Department. Today we brought a lot of different kinds of photographs, and what I have with me here are some examples of what are called stereo photos and a viewer in order to view stereo photos. These photos are taken with a camera that has two lenses slightly separated, and they take a picture of the same subject, and then when you look through a special viewer, it looks 3D. It's a stereo viewer. Well, at the beginning of the 20th century, there were a lot of different formats of photographs being used, and stereo photos were just one example of it. This, for instance, when we had the viewer came from a collection from the Huthsteiner family papers, and Mr. Huthsteiner took photos of machinery that he invented, and so those aren't real exciting. But we also have stereo photos in another collection, the Wolf family photos, and they lived in Torreon, Coahuila before and during the Mexican Revolution. And so it's fun to look at these pictures from over 100 years ago in stereo. I think there is a link between different types of photographs along the border. Also, the historical aspect helps you recollect times past.
My name is Joseph Longo, and I'm a volunteer with the McGoffin Home. I brought an item from our collections, a photograph. It's a photograph of the Topica Spanish Orchestra. This photo is at the McGoffin home in a courtyard in 1936 during the centennial celebration, which was the celebration of the anniversary of Texas independence. We have a copy of this photo at the home, but this is the original. The McGoffin home is one of the oldest residents in El Paso, built in 1875. Joseph McGoffin was an early mover and shaker in El Paso. They also have ties here to New Mexico, related to marriage to Susan Shelby McGoffin.
Hi, my name is Teresa Azamar. I'm an archival intern at the McGoffin Home. I have a correspondence here from August 9th, 1945. It's written by Joseph McGoffin Glasgow, grandson of Joseph McGoffin, and he was in the military during World War II. He wrote many correspondences to his family, and he writes here from Manila, Philippines, and he mentions here that the day before yesterday he heard news of the first atomic bomb hitting Japan, and then at the very end he says that he's just heard news of the second, and then quickly pivots to talking about how it's now after 5 and it's time for him to go for a swim and have dinner. And so it's just a very interesting piece of history, and kind of timely considering the whole Oppenheimer movie and everyone kind of being in that place. I think it's significant because it just tells the story of how, like, a sort of Mexican-American, Irish-American family inserts themselves into American history. Many members of the family went to West Point and were part of the military, and I think that this is just, like, all of the correspondences tell the American story through this one family's perspective.
My name is Shayla Whitaker. I'm with the Branson Library Special Collection Archives. So today I have the WASPI and Shalem history. Basically, the WASPI is a new Bible for faithists. It was created by a John B. Newsborough, who was a dentist. One day he looked out the window, seeing homeless children on the street, and decided that he wanted to do something about it. Newborough developed a religion, as anybody else would with Christianity or Islam. Newborough developed a religion. He came to Las Cruces, got a place near the Rio Grande and developed the Shalem colony. Basically, he built a really big dormitory to fit many orphans, and throughout his time, he brought 19 orphans to the Shalem colony and about 13 adults.
Hi, I'm Sam Weiner, and I'm a curator at the Centennial Museum at the University of Texas at El Paso. So I have photographs from the turn of the century, and what I really love about them is that they're women camping. And if you look at them closely, you can tell who likes camping and who probably doesn't like camping as much. And the reason I brought them is because we have this image in our heads of people back then being very stiff, even photographs. And these kind of just prove it. They're showing people having emotions, and you can clearly tell what they're thinking and whether or not they actually enjoy sleeping on the ground or not. Just proves what people think of the past. And one of my biggest pet peeves is people think several hundred thousands of years ago people were totally different than us, but they weren't. They're us, and they fought, they cried, they laughed, they got hungry, and we often forget that because we're so far removed from it. Just remembering and making sure we remember correctly and not remember preconceived notions in our heads.
My name is Dennis Daly, and I work at the New Mexico State University Library Archives and Special Collections here in Las Cruces. All right, so today one of the things that we brought out is this lithograph. So this is a lithograph from 1854. Now, a lithograph is a printing process. This is probably the first image of Mesilla, New Mexico, ever made. This was made in 1854, and just a couple of years after Mesilla was founded. And this was made by an artist named Carl Schuchard. He was an artist who accompanied a railroad survey from Texas to California, and he was the artist on the survey. So throughout that trip, he painted and drew scenes all along the route, and they came right through here. So they went through El Paso, and then came up the Mesilla Valley to Las Cruces, and he created this image of Mesilla, New Mexico. The significance of this, again, is that this is probably the very first image of Mesilla that was ever produced. The item is a lithograph, so it's a printing process. It was made from the original artwork that the person created. Unfortunately, all the original artwork burned up in a fire in the Smithsonian Institution. So all we have left from that are these lithographs. So the importance of archiving, I think, is just to preserve the artifacts of history, the primary source materials, these original materials from which people can understand the past. It's a little bit different than reading a book. If you read a book about history, you're reading somebody's interpretation of what happened a long time ago. But if you go back to these old documents and actually read, say, a letter or look at a business transaction from the 19th century, then you're actually seeing the thing that happened. And so that's what historians use to base their histories and books and things like that on, are these original documents. And so it's important to preserve them, because people often will go back and revisit these original materials and come up with new ideas about our history.
I am Andrea Jaquez. I'm with Western New Mexico University Miller Library in Silver City, New Mexico. Today we are showcasing our Juan Chacon collection. Juan Chacon was a labor activist with Local Union 890, and he was the president of the union in 1950. And they wanted equality, so they went on strike against the Empire Zinc mine. And the mine owners said if the men were going to walk the picket line, they would be fired. So Juan Chacon's wife, Virginia, said that they will do it. The women will walk the picket line. And in 1950, that was really special because women were supposed to be at home taking care of family. So the men decided, okay, yes, it's worth it. So the men stayed home, the women walked the picket line, and a movie was made called Salt of the Earth, and it was blacklisted, it was banned, And so everybody that worked on that production couldn't get jobs anymore in the film industry, but it is now available on YouTube. Just recalling the hardships of what happened back in the 1950s with these miners, with their families. And the families are still around in Grant County, and they remember vividly the stories.
My name is David Dorado Romo. I'm an historian who focuses on the history of the borderlands. Without archives, I wouldn't have been able to write my history. I wrote a book called Ringside Seat to a Revolution, and it started in the archives. I would usually just follow whatever I would find in the archives. I wasn't looking for something specific.
And out of the things you've seen today, has anything stood out to you?
Oh, fascinating. I'm so glad I came here. I mean, there were a whole bunch of different archives that I had never heard of.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your book?
Okay, so my book is I wrote it a long time ago, about 15 years ago. It's called Ringside Seat to a Revolution, and it started with a finding in the archives. It was a whole bunch of pictures, hundreds of photographs by Harry Blumenthal, who was here around the time of the Mexican Revolution. And what's really fascinating about his pictures, that they weren't your traditional, he wasn't taking pictures of the guys that were doing the shooting. He was just taking pictures of daily life on the border, on both sides of the border during the Mexican Revolution. And those pictures themselves sparked my interest in the social life and the cultural life, like musicians and photographers. And so I have a whole section on photographers during the Mexican Revolution, thanks to my first finding in the archives.
My name is Angelica Valenzuela. I'm the recording and filing supervisor for the county clerk's office. We brought all kinds of things, but what I'd like to talk about is something that I talk about quite often, and it is one of our coroner's reports that we have. This one is from 1912, and it's a report on a gentleman who was unidentified, so probably not from this area. And the coroner's report says, "We, the undersigned Justice of the Peace and jury who sat upon the inquest held this 15th day of January 1912 on the body of a person whose name is unknown, but from a small writing found on body, supposed to be one M. Gutierrez. Body found in precinct number 19 of the county of Doña Ana, that the deceased came to his death by reason of being struck in back of the head, crushing the skull, we believe with stones at the hands of persons unknown." And then it's signed by the Justice of the Peace and the 6 jurors that were part of the coroner's juror. And what this is they're not medical professionals, the jurors. They were not law enforcement. They were just members of the community. And whenever there was a death that was not expected or seemed suspicious, they would call on different members of the community, usually prominent members, and they were men, to come and determine the cause of death. And so again, they weren't medical, professionals, but they were the ones that would determine how the person passed away. And so this is that report. But what was really interesting about this one is that in the clerk's office, we deal with mostly real estate records, and this coroner's report actually had along with it a small coupon book for lunch tickets for the Santa Fe Eating House. Fred Harvey was the man. It says Fred Harvey as the manager, and we know that the Harvey House is very famous in our area for the Santa Fe Railroad, and they were lunch tickets within each coupon book. And so I called around the Harvey House museums in New Mexico, and one said that they did hear or they know about this coupon book. None have ever seen one, but they knew about it and they were given to the workers for lunch. And so more than likely this person maybe was not from the area but worked for the railway. Keeping that record is so important, not only for just research purposes, but to tell how our community was created. We have records of roads, decisions that the county commission made that really shaped our community.
My name is Denise Chavez, and I'm the owner and bookseller and book wrangler at Casa Camino Real bookstore here in Las Cruces. I'm also an author, and I'm also the director of Museo de la Gente, an archival resource center in the borderland community. Our focus is Chicano, Latino, Southwestern, Native American, feminist literature, borderland, and multicultural literature of the West, I would say. And so I have a table here today at the Archival Bazaar. We also have new books from our bookstore, and it's very exciting for me to be here because we have an entire table of Chicana books. Why is it important? Because I'm a Chicana, and because it's the history of the world. It's the history of who we are in the Southwest, the borderland region. I feel comfortable with Mexican American, Mexicana. It's not so much what you call yourself. And I gave a talk today, and I think it's important. If you call yourself a Chicana, you have a political and social consciousness. You have a connection to who you are, where you live, and what your goals are. We have a bookstore right now, 314 South Tornillo Street in Las Cruces, or you can look on Casa Camino Real. We're on A Books. We sell books internationally, but contact us and we will have the hot coffee, café de olla ready, and maybe we'll throw in some pan dulce too.
Thank you so much for watching. We'd like to thank the Border Regional Archives Group and the New Mexico Farm and Ranch Heritage Museum for having us. Make sure to listen to the latest episode of Preserving History and Democracy, a podcast by the Doña Ana County Clerk's Office. We'll see you next year.